Hi everyone, presenting Shiroi Shaiza today. And it's so nice to meet you, Shiroi, after trying to catch up for a long time.
Thanks so much, Ransom. It's lovely to be here.
How have you been? What are you up to nowadays?
Quite a lot of things, mostly trying to, survive this pandemic.
Right?
Yes. But thanks so much for having me here today.
Great.
It's a pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice to meet you.
And so you are currently living in Kohima?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Kohima. I did my schooling till the 10th year. Class 11 and 12, like many young Nagas and people across the Northeast who like to go out and look for other opportunities in studies and in work as well. And a decade ago, I think the offerings in terms of education was quite limited. So my parents funded me to go and study for class 11, 12 in Delhi. Yeah, and then after that to Pune for my graduation. But yeah, I grew up here, lived here, so most of my life here, and I'm back here now working on my own startup now.
I see. Oh, that's very nice to know about. So, like as a young student, like what did you study, let's say in your 11, 12 or in your graduation?
Right. Yeah. I think, Ransom, at that time, most of us were also clueless. I don't know what the generation now is like, but in terms of choosing a stream. But I think one thing that was very important to me was also being, financially independent, having earning on my own. So 11 and 12, I decided to pursue commerce. And then I went to Delhi. Mount Carmel School, where we had a lot of people in the Northeast as well, studying there. So I did my 11 and 12 there, and then moved to pursuing a business, bachelor's in business administration from Pune. Yeah.
From Pune?
Yes.
Which university did you go in Pune?
I did from Symbiosis, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like how many years did it last to study MBA, right?
I did a BBA.
BBA, right?
Yeah,
okay. MBA
that's right.
How many years did it last for you to study?
So for BBA, it's a 3-year course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a 3-year course. So I completed that, and then a lot of people like to pursue their MBA after the BBA immediately, especially in India. But I decided to work for some time and really decide, kind of explore what masters would be appropriate for me.
I see.
So I worked for I think I worked for about 8 years.
8 years after your BBA?
Yeah, after my BBA. And by then, just 2 years back, I got an opportunity to pursue a master's in public administration. So I did my public administration after 8 years of my
Okay, and where did you do your master?
That was in Singapore. It's the National University of Singapore. So they have a policy school called Lee Kuan Yew School.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think that university is like very, very popular when it comes to public policy.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think that one is, in Asia, it is on the top, even globally, in fact, but in Asia it is. And a lot of people come there to study, especially if you're more interested in, policies, especially Asia-specific, Southeast Asia. And so I never studied, political science, or I never studied that, before. But I think as I was working in Nagaland and looking at working a lot around programs in development, working with grassroots as well. So I was working with an NGO and a hybrid model organization. And then I also realized that in order for me to kind of come up with programs or be more effective in the way we designed our programs, I needed to have a more a bigger and broader understanding of what the government was working at as well. So that's when a friend of mine introduced me to the Masters in Public Administration program, and I got an opportunity, I got a scholarship, so then I decided to go and, get a broad understanding. So at this age, I think, especially after 8 years of studies and with a master's and all, more than the academics itself, it's also really around networking with, so we had a lot of policymakers from, different parts of the world, right?
Definitely.
So it gave us an opportunity to see that, hey, things are like quite similar and quite different also in so many countries,
Although that's not your, you don't have the background in humanity or political science. I'm sure you feel that you have been benefited so much from that study.
Right. And also it gave, I think even because the course was mainly for policymakers and we were people working in the grassroots, but it gave us an opportunity to interact. Because sometimes I think when you come up with, programs and policies, it's really it's quite detached from what's really happening on the ground. And for me, since I worked quite extensively in Nagaland with the Entrepreneurs Associates, where I had an opportunity to travel around Nagaland. So the experiences were so valuable, to be able and go and voice that out on a global platform. Yeah.
So like you were working with the EA,
correct.
Like you have worked with them for 8 years, that's what you meant?
Yeah, I worked with them for about 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
And that means you work like at
2 years,
a very young age of your life.
Correct.
Like right after your BBA?
Right after BBA, I worked with a corporate in Delhi for 2 years. Yeah. So I worked by the age of 21 after I graduated. I interned with a company in Delhi, and they were working on a global program called the Global Fund for eradication of HIV and AIDS, and it was a pan-India program. So I got the opportunity to work there and just see, like at a big corporate level, how things work. So I was very lucky to get that opportunity. So for 2 years I worked there.
Okay, then why did you leave such a big offer and come back to Nagaland to work for a small organization?
Yeah. So many things, Ransom. I think for us, I could ask you the same question as well. But a lot of things, but definitely I think our community, our home is very important. And, the question of, what is my contribution or what is, my contribution to my community. And for me, the main inspiration would be also my grandmother. So I grew up with my grandmother.
Can you mention your grandmother's name?
She's Shaiza.
Okay.
And she was a politician and the first
MP of Nagaland.
Yes, the first and only women MP of Nagaland.
Exactly.
Yeah, and growing up with her, of course, she was quite old by the time I was.
Right.
But she was really. We had a lot of people who would visit our house from, very difficult backgrounds or from the village and all. And even till she was on her, literally on her deathbed, she always would find the time to be with them, have, a cup of tea or make sure that she buys something for them, and my parents would also get very annoyed because she was very old also, so we were also quite worried about her. But she would always do that, and it was very important, I think, for her and my grandfather as well, to really look at an equitable society, and that kind of really inspired me and always drew me back to look at also coming back and doing something, Yeah.
That's very interesting. You mentioned you want to contribute to the community. I mean, I read on a website which is yourstory.com.
Correct.
They ran a story about your success and some of your life story.
Right.
And some of your thoughts were spilled there on that website. So one thing that you mentioned on that website really caught my attention, which is, the pinnacle of success, which you mentioned. Pinnacle of success is measured by how much you give back to your community, where you come from. And you call it the merit of
Feast of Merit.
Sorry.
Yes.
So what do you actually mean by that, the Feast of Merit? I want to understand better on that.
Yeah. So actually, the Feast of Merit is not my own coining. It's actually a practice by many of the Naga villages. But just to go back a little bit before that, when I was, like I said, when I had come from Delhi and I was figuring out, what are the things that I could do? What was my next step? I had met up with a friend for coffee one day, and he said, let's go and meet this person who runs an NGO, right? Nitste, the CEO of EA, and who is also my mentor. And what really struck me in that meeting, in the first conversation, is, he told me that, Shiroi, when young people are busy, earning a livelihood, when young people are busy having jobs, employing people, they don't have time for arms or ammunition. They don't have time for alcoholism, they don't have time for doing other things because they're busy, in their own activities, right? So I think that was one thing that really struck me about how entrepreneurship could play a really big role for our society. And so I think that kind of also drew me to want to work with an organization like that. And so I got the opportunity to work with EA. And one thing is we work very extensively with the rural and remote villages as well. And the idea of the Feast of Merit, right, is a Naga practice where, like I had mentioned there as well, it's about, our a person's wealth or success is not measured by how much money or how much money you acquire, how much land you have, right? It's about how much you give back to your community, and for that you get in honor of that, you get a special shawl which is made for you, right? Only the person who has given a Feast of Merit will be allowed to wear that. And the other thing is also around the a special sign on the house, the special Feast of Merit house. And this kind of sort of thing is, it's not about having so much money, but it's about like the community respecting you for generations to come. So what we did with EA is, taking this value and this practice of, a very important practice which today is quite lost, which has been replaced by greed and, by so many other factors, our own individualistic ambitions. So we worked on this idea of Feast of Merit entrepreneurs, where we did encourage entrepreneurs not just to start a business. Of course, on one hand, we all need to survive and we need to look at our economic livelihood, but also on the other hand, how do we, with this, we also contribute back to our community, with the people that we hire. And when you uplift one person, the entire community gets uplifted, So I think this sort of thing really, when entrepreneurs kind of have this idea of being a Feast of Merit entrepreneur, they're not just doing it for some economic benefit, it just goes so much beyond that. And that's the idea that really changed my perspective also, and that really seeded the entrepreneurial spirit in me, to look at, how do I then as a Feast of Merit entrepreneur also contribute back?
Totally. I think it's very interesting to know and learn about a person, a young lady, like from a typical Naga society. Moving towards, contribution, thinking on contributing to the society, to the community more than your personal career development. I think in being graduated from one of the most, one of the best universities in the world, from Singapore, you could have been with the top organizations in the world or with the government at the policy level in so many things. But you just came back to start working on your own, just in your own way to contribute to the society. What really motivated you? Do you think you're not tempted by the fat salary packages that the organizations offer to you?
Not to sound modest or this thing, but honestly, I think just to give a different view to that. I always knew that this was my calling in that sense. It wasn't, of course it's very important. It's not that, I don't think about my own personal benefit. It's really not like that. But I think, like I said, with the concept of the Feast of Merit as well, I think my success is attributed to the success of my community. And with that kind of perspective, I don't really see it as sacrificing something for the other, but really about, that this is my success. When I do this, it's part of my success.
I totally agree.
I do view it in that sense.
Totally But it's very hard, when you start your own organization, your own work, and not to have the salary credit into your account every month. You just have to do.
It is.
It's going to be a very challenging task, and you chose the harder way. That's what I would think. I would say.
I agree with you on that.
So now coming back, now that you have started NagaEd. So what it is all about, and what are you aiming to achieve through NagaEd in Nagaland?
So with NagaEd, so like I said, I think again it goes back to the idea of purpose and really wanting to do something. And in our community, we have so many issues we have to solve, right? And as entrepreneurs, I think, it's like once you get into it, there's one issue, you try to solve it, you see that there's a bigger issue, and then you go into it. So during this time, especially during the pandemic, I think a lot of things came to the surface, right, of what's wrong with our community as well, right? So we saw that, because of the pandemic, so many people lost their access to livelihoods, especially daily wage earners. And a lot of problems. Healthcare sector, we saw, had so many gaps, etc. And I was in Singapore at that time, pursuing my master's, and stuck there actually. For a while, and during this time, me and my partner is based in Australia, in Melbourne, and he's from Nagaland as well. And prior to this, we actually started a tourism company as well, called Wonder Nagaland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, we had to stop our business, and we were also looking at other ways. We were exploring the industry, looking at, okay, what next could we do, right?
Really?
And I think in the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of us were attending webinars. It was just the boom of the whole webinar thing, right? Exactly. And being stuck there, we actually attended this webinar organized by the Indian Mountain Initiatives in the Northeast, where they surveyed about 400 people in the Northeast, and this was in the beginning of the pandemic. And what we saw, which was very shocking for us, was that even before access to livelihoods or access to healthcare, the number one concern for people in the Northeast was access to education. Yeah, and that we just found that very interesting, that people were so concerned about this even before their own access to their own livelihoods, right? So we decided to explore that. We decided to explore what were some of the gaps and how we could intervene. That's how the whole NagaEd story started, really. I see. And so we started speaking to schools and institutions around Nagaland, and looking at what were some of the issues being faced by the institutions, right? So while it's not really a pandemic problem, even before this, our education system has a lot to develop now.
Just that the pandemic exposed the problem.
The pandemic exposed that. Correct. Yeah. But three main issues that we really found was that around accessibility, right? With access to devices, access to access to internet was very poor. Also around the content that was quite outdated, and mainly around teacher trainings, where teachers didn't really have the capacity. Yeah. So coming together, speaking to institutions, and we also surveyed about 3,000 students and about 800 parents to find out these issues. And so we came up with a solution where we could bring accessible education to Nagaland, and bring quality education. So what we did was we tied up with Australian educators to really work with our Naga teachers to break down the content, to make it more digestible for students, to contextualize it. Yeah, and that's how we really started. So our solution now has both, an online, basically we have a platform as well, but we also make sure that the content is also accessible offline. So, through pen drives or through the, hard copies. So we're working with about 4 schools now, really training their teachers, empowering them, because what we realize is that, with students, you give them any device or any, these days with the mobile games and everything, right? Students pick up very fast, but teachers really need that empowerment, and we also can see the double-fold impact of teachers getting empowered, right? And we also saw that more importantly than the solution, there's so many solutions in India, but what the thing missing in this part of the region, especially not just Nagaland, but we can talk about other northeastern states as well, right? There are 4,200 edtech companies in India, but these solutions are not getting contextualized or getting adopted by us, so how do we do this? So really, we're also, in the process of discovering that, but really with our training content, with our training modules and content, the response has been phenomenal from the schools. And we also saw it as an opportunity for us to bring quality education, right? Because with we're not just talking about just an online solution, but education is moving towards a more hybrid, solution. And more than the 3,000 students we surveyed, more than 55% said that after the pandemic, what kind of education do you want to pursue? And more than 55% said that, they wanted to go hybrid, Yeah, everyone wanted to use some digital tool or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
So hybrid, you mean in a layman's language?
Yeah.
Like
hybrid is as in like more of both face-to-face and online as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a substitution that we're just going to use a platform, but it's about, how do we supplement an online platform to offline? Let me just very simply, the question we asked was also around, like growing up in Nagaland, right? Most of our teachers, they spend a lot of time giving us notes in the classroom, right? And we don't get to spend quality time, right? Exactly. So when you talk about hybrid, it's also having like a lot of that content digitized so that you're able to learn something at home, and then when you come to the classroom, the teachers are actually able to spend time with you to, answer your doubts or, to be able to really make you understand, right? Instead of wasting time on like just giving out notes and, so we're really looking at digitizing that part of it. Yes. Yeah.
I think that's really a out of the box solution, I think, because as you said, just accessing the online thing is not the only solution.
No.
The contents of what we are giving them, the contents that we're giving them, let's say the TLM teaching learning materials, although they access online, it should be something of sort of a quality contents that we should be supplying to them.
Correct, yeah. And contextualizing that, to their understanding as well.
And you said like there are more than 4,000 edtech solutions in India. So
out
of that, we don't know how many of them will be so relevant and can be contextualized in the context of Nagaland.
Correct, yeah.
That'll take some time and some effort to really dig deeper.
That's right, yeah. So for us, I mean, on one hand, like I said, many issues that we want to tackle, but with education, we really realize that it's a game changer, if we're able to really bring in quality education. So we don't, the technology is, an enabler. So it's used as, we see that through technology, we're really able to scale this up across. But also, we really want to look eventually. The first thing right now, because of the infrastructure of our state and, a lot of things that are not accessible. So we're looking at accessibility, but eventually we really want to look at also like, we call it 3 pillars for NagaEd, is really looking about, talking about vocational skills as well. Like the Feast of Merit is, a Naga practice, but many of us don't know about it, and it's not part of our curriculum. So eventually we're also looking at how do we bring in these kind of concepts or these important practices, beyond the curriculum that they're studying, and how do we then translate this, for the bigger community, right? For this generation to learn. And the other pillar is also around lessons for living. So how do we, as local and global citizens go out there and connect with the world, right? So those are some of our thinking around that, because as of now, like a lot of us, we're studying, but we're not able to translate those skills to go and get a job, right?
Exactly.
Some of the jobs are not available, but even for entry level, I think we're still stuck, into even getting to that point.
I mean, like the Naga society, very fond of arts and like, theology. Thousands of students are studying this. And as soon as they graduate, what will they do? They cannot be just employed. They don't have the skill to be used for any industry. Correct. Except for teaching or maybe like in some private schools.
That's the thing.
So, and it's so disheartening to learn that, out of 7 out of 10 are unemployed in Nagaland. So like only 3% are maybe like one way or the other, they're employed. So it's a really, really big issue. I think your EdTech solution can definitely, I think, bring a lot of change into the life of many young Nagas for sure, I think.
I mean, that's the hope. Like we said, I think the thing is with us Nagas as well, we have so much creativity, right? Like every other Naga person except me, I'm a horrible singer, but every other person can sing, play the guitar, do something creative, and quite entrepreneurial as well. Very entrepreneurial as well. But the thing is, our education system is just sort of optimized for us to do one thing, which is like, become administrators, right? And everyone's not an administrator, right? With no offense to, So it's just that everyone is just geared to think of one thing, but how do we then harness the creativity? How do we look beyond that? And how do we learn how to also make these pay. Right,
exactly,
at the end of the day, we need we need for it to be a thriving industry, right? So, I think those are some of the thinking around why we really feel that we need to shake the education sector. We need to disrupt it at some point. And then this is a great opportunity because what's happened is nothing has really changed. It's just that the 2 years, the attitudes have changed. The attitudes of people to be more open to digital, to be more open to, and then you see there's a whole world out there. And then this talk show, for example, also, I mean, I think it just boomed, right? And you see another 3, 4, so I think this is the time right now for us to access that global thing, but how do we then contextualize it for our community?
That's very interesting. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so to bring a change, at least in the field of education and employability for the young people, let's say the young Nagas, I think we need, which one do you think is responsible? We need to start working on it to build some skills, or do we blame the ecosystem that we have? Like, the ecosystem in our culture, in our context. There's nothing for us to work on. But like, do we wait for that to come, for the government to come and the private companies to come to our state? Or do we start creating on our own? And how do we create about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think if we're going to wait for the ecosystem, nothing is going to happen, I don't think anything is going to happen if we keep waiting for something to happen, right? So I think the first thing, at least, for me, what I've realized is just to, even in a small way, to start something and see if it's going to work out or not, right? So just taking that first step is really important because currently, in Nagaland, for example, even having a company or having a business, and I'm sure a lot of people would also agree that even hiring, talent, for example, for the edtech sector, we don't have anyone, who has been exposed to very few people, not anyone, but very few people who have been exposed to this. It's very new for all of us, including myself. I'm not an educator myself, right? But I see that this is a problem that needs to be solved, so I'm going into it. So even with digital education, it's very new for us, so we don't expect people also to have all the skills. But we have to build up that ecosystem slowly. So let me just give you an example of, a teacher in our team. Who's a digital education specialist now. So she started as a teacher, and we've trained her. And she's picked up really well. In the 6 to 12 months, she's become an expert. And she's our now digital education specialist who goes and trains other teachers, right? But that role did not exist actually when we first advertised. Like, no one knew what it was, right? So now what we're doing is going to schools and really teaching training the teachers to be experts in their own field, right? So in that sense, slowly, we're creating that ecosystem. So, like you said, I think waiting for that ecosystem to happen, definitely we need a lot of intervention and a lot more conversations with policymakers and, to come up with policies that are more relevant and contextual for us. But I think, there's one thing is we don't need to recreate the wheel. We should just look at the strengths that we already have. And also we can learn from other people who have done it. So, for example, with NagaEd, we looked at indigenous communities, or we looked at countries that had similar issues like us and what solutions they were already employing. And that's where we could do some of the research and bring in the best practices to create NagaEd, So these days, I think with the content that's out there, with, with the power that we have with internet as well, there's so much that can be done. It doesn't have to be like a boom, but, small things of what's going to work for us. But definitely for that we need, I think the more important thing is the will of the people. The will of the people, and and the will of our leaders as well, to come together to really look at what are some of the solutions that can work. So in my thing, I think I've really seen the power of entrepreneurship, especially working with EA and, supporting one small shop, giving, which has a rippling effect to give livelihoods to 4 or 5, people. I think we really need to start encouraging that kind of encouraging a spirit of like entrepreneur, like, you know, encouraging harnessing creativity of our young people. Yeah.
But as you said, like entrepreneurship, which is should be, it's the, I think, driving force in any given society, I believe. Because without entrepreneurship, government alone cannot really employ thousands and lakhs of, you know, educated students or youth.
Correct.
So I think without having that spirit of entrepreneurship, I think we would not have a driving force for employment in our society also.
Correct, correct.
But at the same time, to start an entrepreneurship or, you know, as an entrepreneur, we are seeing a lot of challenges that they're facing.
Correct, correct.
Which need not mention. You know, we know the context of our society, and in this kind of situation, how do you think we should be tackling with this problem?
That's right. So I think the reason that today I'm able to sit here and speak is because of the people that have paved the way in the past. You know, despite not having anything, I think now when you talk about entrepreneurship, even for us to be able to articulate what entrepreneurship, what business is developing or evolving a bit in Nagaland, right? 5 years back, it was still, different. We're also trying to figure out what exactly is entrepreneurship, you know. But I give credit to the people who have, you know, despite the challenges, you know, been able to make way for people like me now to come into this space, right? So it's not easy, definitely, so many challenges, like you said, but we have to start from somewhere, you know. I think the reason for, you know, our society, we're just too dependent on the outside force, right? We're just too dependent on the central government. We're just too dependent on, you know, the getting, I mean, this kind of getting something from outside. But we have to sort of really create that ecosystem ourselves, right? So in a small way, like if we're able to create something for education, I think in so many ways, a lot of people are doing that already in Nagaland. It's just about, you know, kind of trying to learn how to bring that together, right? Yeah, so I think, I hope I'm answering your question.
I mean, you really
well,
do, you really do.
Yeah.
You know, someone from somewhere has to start it.
Yeah, correct.
Has to, you know, just get up from your seat and just start moving.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's all about entrepreneurship as far as I understand.
Correct,
you just have to start it.
That's right.
So, and with this kind of, in this kind of context, I think some kind of intervention from the government also will be very, very important in this.
Definitely.
You know, at this time. So do you think, as an entrepreneur and as a person who has dealt with like hundreds of entrepreneurs, do you think government is doing enough? Like, let's say the state of Nagaland?
I think, definitely there's a lot more that can be done and that needs to be done. We have seen, I mean, I have personally seen that, you know, there are a lot of schemes as well, not just the state government, but even from the central government. Central schemes, but it's concentrated to just a handful, you know, or even the information that's flowing out is just not enough at this point of time. So definitely, I think there's just a lot to be done from the government side as well, not just in implementation and execution, but also in making, you know, the awareness and advocacy, you know, the information flow to the people who need it, right? Yeah, so I think that's not happening at the moment. And the way we understand, you know, anything is scheme or subsidy kind of language that we're still talking, right? But when you talk about business, we have to start talking investment, right? We have to start changing that language.
It has to sound like a corporate.
Exactly, so even for our business people, right? A lot of us, the way we see business, of course, on one hand is just looking at it as a, you know, we're making profit or like a side thing, or, you know, I've given exam, you know, the NPSC exam like 10 times, now I'm going to start business. So that's the attitude that we have. But if we really want to like start changing that, you know, we really have to talk about the investment. What's the, you know, how do we attract more investors to come in? You know, so when we're talking about investors, your perspective automatically changes. You're not talking about subsidy or grant, right? So how can the government support that, you know, language for us to start speaking that language, you know? And at the end of the day, we are, it's new for us as well. I mean, even for me, you know, along the process of, you know, getting opportunity to interact with people from various backgrounds. And, you know, slowly only I'm able now to really articulate that language, you know. So for us as a people, you know, as an indigenous community, I think we're slowly realizing that, you know, even to put the right words to, you know, what we're thinking about or how we want our ecosystem to develop. So I think, definitely the government needs to like recognize these unique, attributes that we have and like come up with then contextualize programs and programs that that will be able to be beneficial for us.
Yes, very much. We need a very good facilitation from the government, to support the entrepreneurs, not financially, not necessarily financially sometimes, but that kind of moral support, that kind of awareness.
Yeah.
And you were listed as one of the 30 out of 30 in the Forbes, something like that.
Yeah, it was actually a special mention.
Yes, special mention.
For the impact.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
So, and what is it about, special mention?
Yeah, so the special mention from Forbes, so I'm part of a community called Acumen. So Acumen is it's a movement of change makers, and it's a leadership program which I was part of. So they had through Acumen, they had nominated me to be part of the Forbes program. The 30 under 30 for special impact.
That's all over India.
Yeah. Across India.
Okay.
So I really had a good opportunity. It was the first time, especially like breaking that ceiling of, very few Northeast. I think me and someone from Manipur were the first ones.
I see.
Yeah. So it was really around the work that, so at the time when I was working at EA as well, around livelihoods. So we were starting a few companies to, one for, around food produce, and the other one was around pork. How do we look at, enabling an environment where we are able to produce more pork? Because we import so much pork currently, in Nagaland.
Really?
So we had just started a company like that. So so I was very privileged to be able to be listed there. Yeah, something I don't really like talking about.
Okay. It's nice to have that special mention.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something really great, and that kind of achievement is very, very, very much commendable. We don't have much, 30 of the 30. So do you think women, let's say the Naga women, can also thrive or become successful in entrepreneurship in this kind of, let's say, business area?
100%. Yeah, I think even now, if you look at it around you, most of the businesses are run by women. Be it the street vendors, be it you go to Instagram, how many women are running businesses, right? So 100%, I think there's so much scope and opportunity. But I think again, the way women view themselves, right? Like for me personally speaking, like we don't really like. I don't know, after a certain point, we just like to shy away. I just constantly there's a feeling, I think it's the societal pressure as well, the feeling of not wanting to be seen too much, or wanting to shy away. And honestly, I struggle with that every day, and I know so many women who are doing so well, but also don't really want to come out there, and so it's because of a lot of things, but I think it's really time for, I guess even at the policy level or in ways to, tell these stories, right? And enable a more, a more conducive environment for women to be able to speak without feeling too,
I know.
Yeah.
That's true.
So a friend of mine, she sent me an article as well, and we've been talking about this a lot, that there's this constant feeling of, that I'm not ready yet. After I do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to do this. So even for me, if someone gives me a position or someone invites me to speak somewhere, I'm like, I don't have the expertise yet.
Exactly.
I think I'm not ready yet for this. I think, especially with women, that feeling is really strong.
I think it also same thing with men. I'm the witness.
Really? maybe.
Just to even organize this talk show, I feel like, what am I doing? There are many more people who are smarter than me.
Correct.
And why should I be the one doing this?
Correct.
But I think we just have to start it and do humbly in your own way.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I think it's just really just taking that first step, right?
Exactly,
like we were discussing. Otherwise, we're just going to be perpetually stuck
very
somewhere.
True.
Yeah.
And maybe in the concluding part, I mean, personally, I'm very proud of you as a Naga, and
thank you so
a
much.
woman leading in business area, in the entrepreneurship area, in many policy levels. I'm really proud of you. So, what would you be your, what would be your advice to young Naga girls who are coming up and who are doing their education and still confused what to do in life?
Right.
What would you say?
I think the theme of our conversation today, like just reflecting back on what we've been talking about, and just you giving me this opportunity has been also a time for me to reflect on these things. And advice, I would say for me, what really helped me to come this far is actively seeking out mentors or people who have that kind of experience, not directly related to my field, but really finding mentors to help me look at the potential that I might have. So one example is, so I have like I mentioned, like Nitste Dulo, and I have another mentor, Gopen Moses, who is also part of the EA management team. And when I first started my career working in Nagaland as well, they looked at me not as a girl, not as a young person, but as like any other, as a professional, and that really gave me that confidence, so then I actively sought out their mentorship, so in terms of really trying to figure out, it's like things keep changing, so you can't really have that one thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life. Some people are lucky to find that, but I think just having mentors to guide you along the way with the decision making and to actively give you, that's fantastic. For me, in my entrepreneurship journey, having a partner is very important, because we're really able to complement our skills, and start something. So for me, that's what really helped me to have a partner in my business, to be able to, bring in those, bringing the skills that was required, for our business, and also to check in on each other as well, So that's been a huge inspiration for me. So in terms of advice, things are going to be always messy, right? So I think one is, taking that first step. Second is also, there's enough space for success for everyone, There's enough space. There's no one. It's not saturated. So just because someone is doing well, let's say someone is doing well in a business, doesn't mean that there's no space for you there, right? So I think we need more people to come up. There's enough space for success for everyone, to thrive. So taking that first step and changing our mindset to see that, okay, how does that success look for me? I think that's important.
Personally, I have, it has really touched me in many ways, in my perception about society and in my perception about work in entrepreneurship. And, talking with you, conversing with you really gives me that kind of, courage to do even more in what I want to do. So I really appreciate you for joining me in this conversation.
Thanks so much.
And I'm really happy to have, done this with you. And I look forward, really, I would like to do this again, like seeing the response of the audience. I'm sure like we can do it again.
100%, yeah.
There are many things to talk about.
Yes.
Many things.
I think we've just scratched the surface today.
Yeah, exactly.
So we would love to, like I said, even for NagaEd, and it's been, we're starting off now.
Right.
It's been a year. But I would love to come and share more. Not just on the success, honestly, mostly on the failures and the challenges. So the next time, I'm happy to come and talk more around that. But thanks so much for having me.
Let's do this more often, Shiroi.
100%.
Thank you.